Hello gamer, I come from the future, and I'm here to tell you that your blossoming career in competitive video games will end in one of three ways. The first is that you can retire peacefully, on top of the world, after achieving basically everything you've ever wanted with your game of choice. You'll be remembered in the annals of history, although a random Redditor here or there will still wonder if you could break top 100 today. The second is that you could improve at a crazy rate, but then have your career stolen from you at the peak of your skill by a health problem, like watching your hands disintegrate before your very eyes. The third, and sadly most likely, is that you simply drop off at some point during your progression. You stop caring, you stop showing up to tournaments, and then you fade away into the void, leaving behind an unfinished resume of Smash.gg results. Actually, there's also a fourth way. You can become arguably the greatest of all time in your game, and get caught in a match-fixing scandal that not only blows up the game you got good at, but also literally gets you investigated by your country's local officials. I've been playing competitive Smash since 2013, which by no means is old school in the scene built around a game that came out when I was 6 years old. But I've been around the block enough times to see most of the players I started playing with just drift away from the game. And when I see newer players obsess about the fastest way to learn, the right ways to practice, and how hard they should be grinding, I can't help but think about how little that will all matter if 2 years down the line they aren't even around to see the fruits of their labors. To me, the first step in combating burnout is to simply realize that it's happening. We often treat emotional state in a binary way, either you feel sad or you don't, but I've always seen it as more of a spectrum. Every time I've burned out enough to need to take a major break from the game, it's always been after weeks and months of warning signs I didn't know to look out for. Through trial and error, I've learned that the first sign that I should reassess my attitude towards competing is when I start heavily leaning on routine. There are so many different methods of improving at Melee, like tinkering with I need data, programming 20xx CPUs to do motions over and over, and pretending like I do anything with my folder or Slippy replays. When my mental state is great, I feel open-minded enough to embrace all these methods of practice, because learning gives me more tools to express myself in game. But when I feel like poop, I find any excuse to lean on my tried and true habits of just mindlessly queuing into the infinite legion of unranked Falcos. This simple metric of noticing when I'm resisting new types of learning becomes a teensy litmus test that warns me well in advance that I'm starting to see competing as a slog. And when Melee transforms from a video game into the day job I'm trying to get away from, I find it helpful to have quick fixes that improve my mood. I want to bring up an anecdote of my literal worst tournament performance of all time, which happened at GOML 2019. It was this weekend that I flew into Toronto for a super major, only to accidentally drink way too much caffeine before my pool, become a nervous, anxious wreck, and go 0-2, despite having gone to super majors for years and having made it out of round 1 pools multiple times at this point. I distinctly remember getting up-thrown, up-smashed multiple times by this freaking Luigi, and if you know the matchup, you'll know that this is not a true combo. You can just hold behind the Luigi and he actually can't get Jack Diddley Squad off of grab. And I knew this at the time, but I was so consumed by frustration at myself and a general vague awareness that this was squandering months of preparation leading up to this event. And mid-game, I was already thinking about the flood of, oh, didn't you go to that one tournament? How did you do? That I would have to answer for weeks to come. But this weekend actually taught me an important lesson, because my friends at the event were really understanding and I still had a blast. We bar crawled through Toronto, I overdosed on poutine, and I still got to engage in some of my favorite post-tournament run rituals. I got a tattoo drunk and spent the nights fiending for friendlies against random players with my secondaries, pretending that this was my first tournament and that I had been playing for 6 weeks. I think that over time, I've learned that cultivating a friend group, especially people going through the same grind as me, really takes the edge off of any transient failure that happens. Every Smash player I've talked to has countless stories of getting frustrated and underperforming, and if you don't believe me, you can just stare at the faces of players on stream. Well, I didn't sleep well the night before and I didn't get to warm up, and Toronto is so freaking cold, like why would anyone live in a country where you have to worry about getting mauled by grizzly bears? And even nowadays that in-person events are all wrecked by COVID, there are so many ways of reminding ourselves that Melee isn't a solitary slog, like chatting with friends over Discord about improvement, having a beer and talking about lane matchups, and messing around with silly game modes. Sometimes I think people can have a really one-dimensional view of practice and overfixate on a need to be productive, but I found it really helpful to view rest and fun as important investments in my future self, especially when I need to cash in on mental toughness later on. While short-term fixes can take the edge off of burnout, I think there's only one ultimate way to maintain a positive outlook over years of play. For me, that was cultivating an internal sense of purpose from playing that's detached from external results, like whether I'm on a power ranking or whatever. I have this edgy thought that if going to the gym is inducing small bouts of physical stress on my body for the sake of becoming physically stronger, then competitive video games is the same thing but to develop mental resilience. And just how failing at the gym doesn't really matter, losing a tournament set for a video game also won't kill me in the grand scheme of things. I love competing because it challenges me in new and quirky ways that has tangibly helped me in all other aspects of my life. Trying to maintain perfect clarity and focus when competing on stage, dealing with my own ego in tandem with all the other egos around me, and learning to dredge up those last vestiges of willpower in the last stock, last game set. These are just fascinating self-improvement projects to be working on. With this reframing, every in-game and out-of-game roadblock I run into just becomes an interesting puzzle for me to solve, both physically and mentally. Even when I encounter a random person on Unranked who is salty and taunting in between every stock, the situation becomes win-win. Either I wreck their dumb face, and that always feels good, or I get challenged psychologically in a unique way. And as a meta point, when I read stories of YouTubers burning out on Reddit because they fixate on how many views their videos get or sub counts, it reminds me of all the mental traps I had to navigate in my Smash career when I cared a little too much about any given bracket result. Ultimately, if there was one takeaway of this video, I think it would be that beyond all the frame data and matchup analysis, video games are supposed to be fun. Somewhere down the line, it's easy to forget that at its core, Melee is this weird anomaly of a game where you can talk about doing a dash dance, shield stop, reverse short hop, sour spot, forward air edge cancel, as if we're playing competitive Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and that just owning a GameCube controller initiates you into a strange, niche, worldwide subculture built around a party game that its creators want nothing to do with that came out in 2001. And from time to time, getting sweaty and tryhard and over-optimizing how Princess Peach beats up a fighter plane pilot on Yoshi's Story while absurdly cheerful music plays in the background, and that little elephant peeks her head out and says hi, can be the best kind of fun. Hello, thank you for watching. It is quite late, so I needed a few of these to get through the editing process, but we made it. I did want to pedal our Discord, so I'm gonna put a link to that down below. But whether you play Smash or you just like thinking or talking about Smash, feel free to join, and hopefully see you again next week.